Welcome back to ESPR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Danny. We have just seen Liam Davies stop Jason Cunningham inside one round in Telford on TNT Sports. Danny, thanks for joining me straight away after the fight. I know we've got a long evening ahead of us. There's another slightly bigger fight happening that we're staying up for tonight. But yeah, still enjoyed the main event in Telford tonight in the UK. Not much to dissect because the fight didn't last very long, but yeah, your thoughts on Liam Davis's performance tonight?
Yeah, wasn't expecting that. I did think Davis could potentially stop Cunningham, but I was expecting it maybe to be sort of down the stretch when sort of Cunningham starts to feel the pace a bit more. Definitely wasn't expecting to come out like that. Yeah, really, really impressive. Liam Davis just goes from strength to strength. It's been spoke about a lot in the build up to this fight and people chatting about it. He was underdog against Mark Leach. The Beluta fight was thought of as a very close fight and made short work of the both of them. And he's made even shorter work of Jason Cunningham. I think as me and you were sort of discussing that Zolani Tet knockout for Cunningham was pretty brutal for a fighter at that stage of their career. And yeah, I don't think, with all due respect to Liam Davis, who it's a fantastic win, and hopefully it builds his profile more because he deserved it. He's come up the traditional route. I don't think it was the best version of Jason Cunningham he was in with.
Yeah, Jason Cunningham. This was his 40th fight tonight. He's kind of had seven losses. This is his third stoppage loss of his career. So yeah, I think you're possibly right there, but I'm not if you consider the last kind of 3-4 years, Jason Cunningham's been on a really good run. He's just had that one loss to Tete, which is kind of one step too far for him. And so was tonight from what we've seen. What level would you say Liam Davis is on now? Obviously, the European title was on the line tonight, Danny. He's he's won the British title, that was on the line as well. But where, like, if you had to pin him down to an actual level when you were describing him, what sort of level would you say he was at now? 14-0, 6 knockouts, and yeah, has kind of achieved a fair amount of in the time that he's been in the sport so far.
Yeah, I rate Liam Davis highly. I think he's cemented himself as at the very least European level. Cunningham obviously won the European himself off. Remember, we speak a lot about like good European champions and bad European champions, and he won it off one of the lesser ones, but he dominated him to win it. So by that logic, he's a proper European champion, and yeah, Davis has won it well. Yeah, I think if you factor in, I know Zolani Tet's obviously it's come out that he was just in or whatever, but he would be regarded as a world level fighter, I think, before that at super bantamweight. And whilst maybe Cunningham was a bit fresher that night than he was tonight, Davis has made even better work of him than Zolani Tet. So I think you're maybe one really good win away from saying Liam Davis is a world level 102 20 pounder. I wouldn't make that jump just yet myself. But yeah, I think he's maybe one solid win away from getting there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, it's exciting because he clearly will fight anyone. He's clearly kind of got a lot of momentum in his career at the moment. So we'll just have to see what's next. Speaking of that, Dennis McCann was in attendance tonight at ringside, was also at the weigh-in, doing a bit of punditry work yesterday as well. He fights on August the 18th at York Hall against Arnott Beluta, obviously one of Liam Davis's previous opponents. I don't want to assume he's going to win that fight. I think it's a great fight. I think it's a tough test for him. However, if he does, do you think we could see that fight maybe in the end of the year, beginning of 2024?
I think so. I think that's very likely the fight to be next. Obviously, both Queensbury fighters. And then when even in the build up to this fight, when Liam Davis was sort of asked what he thinks could be next, like a lot of fighters will say, "Oh, it's world title next," but realistically, it's not going to be. You know what I mean? The world titles are going to be tied up for a while. It's going to be in the UA versus Tapales at the end of the year, and I can't imagine Liam Davis say Inoue does have the belts at the end of the year. I can't imagine Inoue is thinking of a fancy night in Telford. And I think the McCann fight's probably the biggest fight out there for him. I think that could be built into a really good sort of domestic fight. I think the build up would be quite good. That would be a very interesting clash of personalities. I think that's one thing you sort of saw in this build up, the sort of how real it was, I'm not sure, but the needle between
Mm.
Davies and Cunningham, I think you saw a bit more into Davies' personality, came out of his shell a bit more, and I think he's quite funny at times. I think I enjoyed. They only uploaded it today, which was so stupid on TNT Sport, the face off, but it's actually quite good. I think Liam Davies is quite funny. And Dennis McCann I really like as well as a character, and like goes without saying he's a fantastic young fighter too. So yeah, I would love to see that fight next.
Yeah. I think, look, it would be, yeah, look, it would be a decent sized fight, wouldn't it? I just hope that both fighters are up for it. Dennis McCann, he's still only 22, but I just think he's being spoken about as one of the biggest prospects we've had in this country. And in my opinion, if you're as good as people say you are, then you need to be pushed a little bit quicker than your average fighter. So I hope Dennis McCann would accept that fight. I think Liam Davies would. And I
Yeah.
think, as you said, like it's the winner of that fight is possibly in a good position to fight for a world title in 2024. If Inoue beats Tapales or Tapales beats Inoue, then maybe all the belts could be freed up, possibly. So we'll see. Would you, being a bit cheeky here, because we're looking a bit too forward into the future, would you side with one of those guys if that fight does get made in a few months' time?
I think we need to see how McCann looks against Beluta, because in terms of resume, like there's no real comparison in who's the better resume. You know, Mark Leach, Beluta, and Jason Cunningham was a serious 3-fight win streak for like a domestic/European level fighter. And like, who's Dennis McCann's best win? Like off the top of my head, what, James Beach?
Jimmy Beach, I think. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Like, no disrespect to James Beach, like really game fighter, but he's not on the level even close to those three that I've mentioned. And we'll have a much better gauge, obviously, after the Beluta fight, which, as you say, is a live fight for Dennis McCann. But Dennis McCann, even though it's not been against the as good an opposition as Davis fought, has looked good in his last few fights. He's had quite a few stoppages recently. It's been interesting. I think a lot of people would, depending on how he looks against Beluta, potentially have McCann as a favourite. So there could be some interesting betting angles coming up. But yeah, all depends on how McCann looks against Beluta. Hopefully they get Davis fucking ringside and in the ring and have a bit of a fucking bit of a shove, a bit of handbags, and get the train rolling for the fight, because I think it could be built into a pretty good event.
Yeah, I think so. Look, it would be look, it wouldn't be the biggest fight of the year, but it would be a decent one. It would
Like,
think
you would definitely be looking forward to that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, I would love it, mate. I would hope it would happen in London, but I don't want to get too carried away. For all we know, Dennis McCann could get iced in a couple of weeks. So but we'll see what happens. Danny, yeah, I feel like there's not too much to dive into the fight, though it did last one round. I don't think you can really debate over whether it should have been stopped or not, so we're not going to have that discussion. So there's really not much to talk about. So we will leave it there, and we will move on to the rest of the night. Danny, thank you for joining me. Liam Davies has stopped Jason Cunningham inside a round, and we will see what happens for him next. Danny, thank you very much for your time.
no other, mate. Cheers.